Okay, I've got two pieces of juniper I'm going to pick through. This one, I already turned a slice of it, and when I did, it was a much thinner piece than that. This inclusion broke on me, so I had to epoxy it back together. I went ahead and bought a 16-ounce container of epoxy, and I have some dye that I used to make a soft salmon and steelhead fishing lure out of it, and it worked quite well actually. So I poured that in there, and I've let it sit for a couple of weeks now, hoping that that holds it together. I'm not sure I want to turn this one because I brought a different one in, and that's this one. That's also a piece of juniper, and you can see the nice wood there. I have another half of this still put away, and eventually I'll turn it. I want to maybe get this mounted up and see how balanced it is. I don't think it's going to be very balanced, and I'll decide what to do with it. So let me get it between centers and we'll have a look at that, because I think this is the one I want to turn. So I've been playing with this for a little while, and I'm trying to get the center in a position that it captures most of this really pretty wood in here. It's really out of balance. I'm going to go ahead and cut some of this off of these ends and try to balance it out. And on the next one, I'll spend a little more time and try my best to leave everything on the outside of it. So let me bandsaw this up and I'll be right back. Okay, it doesn't look like the same piece. I've cut quite a bit off of it. I'm going to go ahead and round it up, and then we'll see what we can do for a shape on it. That's really pretty right there, and right here, so that's looking good. Got a pretty healthy bark inclusion here and here, and that's where that's just wanting to tear out going across this. It's an end grain bowl, and this will happen. Yeah, let's try a 5/8 conventional on this. Wow, look at that. Okay, I just resharpened again. Let's just see if we can get a nice smooth cut, and then I think we have it. There, that felt good. Yeah, got it. Now, whew, that's nice. Do I want to leave this little divot here? It's smooth inside of it. I think it might be very interesting. I'm going to get a wire brush and see what happens here, and then I'll decide. That just might not be anything I want to deal with. Well, I think I figured out what it is. It looks like a bug hole, bug tracks, and it goes deep. Oh boy, that might be interesting. That'll be like a nature-made piercing, I guess you'd call it. So we're leaving it. I'm not going to fill it. Alright, I'm going to cut my tenon on here, and the base is going to be whatever is left after I do that. I'm going to make it a little extra long. I'm using these heavy-duty jaws. There's a dovetail on the end of them, and there's gripping rings on the inside. It's hard to see, but there's quite a bit of rings on there, and that goes down there at least 5/8, I think. Yeah, about 11/16. Because this is end grain, I want to have a substantial tenon on there. So I've got a 1/2 inch swept back, and we'll see if we can get us a nice tenon. I'm going to try this 40-40 grind. It works pretty good to cut end grain. Yeah, a lot better. About like that should do it. Alright, it's time to sand, and I'm really happy with how the gouge handled this darker wood. This is a bit harder than the rest of it. That didn't turn out bad at all, but this is almost, don't even need to sand it. But I'll start with 180, work my way to 400. Juniper is an extremely dusty wood, so I have my dust collector sitting here ready to help out. I'll get my face mask on, and we'll get sanding. And I'll probably put the finish on after we turn the inside. So let's get going on that, and I'll show you a little bit of the sanding here with the 180. I'm going to sand it in reverse, and that helps direct it over here. And also when you're cutting this way, fibers are knocked down that direction. If you sand the other direction, it helps get those fibers that are laid down. And actually sanding both directions is a really good thing to do. Okay, let's get going. All done sanding to 400, and it's ready to flip. Now, I'm not totally done sanding this. Because it is an end grain bowl and I'm sanding across the grain, prior to putting the finish on it, on the outside and the inside, I will take sheets of probably just 500 grit, and then I'm going to go over it with the grain. If there happens to be any scratches going across, this should get rid of all of them. So I'm just about ready to flip it, but I want to show you one more thing. This is a profile of an end grain bowl. The best cut I got was going downhill. And the reason that you get a better cut doing that is you're not cutting against the fibers. If you go this way, uphill, you're cutting against the grain. If you go down, you're slicing the grain. I will rough it going this way just to get a shape. Final finishes, you go downhill, you're going across it and you're not pulling it. Same thing on the inside. If you come up this direction, you're slicing the grain again. The grain's going like this, you're slicing it. That works for me. I just wanted to point that out. So let's get it flipped around. So I've taken the bowl off, and now I'm going to take the faceplate off. I don't know if I showed you how I had it on there before, but I had the faceplate on it. And there's my tenon with the nice dovetail matching the jaws. I don't have a true center here because I had a faceplate. I normally like to line it up with that. So instead, I'm just going to hold it up with this strip of wood just to apply some pressure and get it squared up against my jaws. It looks good. We'll tighten it up really good. And once we get going, I'll establish a new center on here. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is get this flat, and while I'm doing that, I'm going to think about how I want to hollow it. It's really nice to get something in the middle where you can come across the grain like I showed you on that little sketch. And you can drill a hole in there, or you can use a hollowing tool, or you can do both, and that's probably what I'll do. So let's do this first and we'll get to hollowing it out. Decided to go ahead and drill it. See how hard the wood is. Start out about 300 RPMs. I have it drilled to about 1 inch from the bottom, and I'm going to start with this hollowing tool, at least until I get to the inclusions, but this is probably the best tool to cut a situation like that. So let's see how it goes. About 650 RPMs. Well, it's looking pretty good. Even though I'm getting bigger shavings, it's still not as fun as making nice curly shavings cutting flat grain, but it's worth it to get this beauty. About 1100 RPMs. Well, that's not bad. So, use the negative rake scraper on it and get it ready for sanding. I think it's time to sand it. I just don't trust these little thin areas. I don't want to lose one now. This piece here doesn't have a lot of support. It was hard to cut anymore without this doing a lot of vibrating, and I probably could have got it done, but I have another reason that I want to stop here. I like how this sweeping radius shows off this grain. It looks like the bowl was sitting down and somebody poured some colored material on it, and it just flowed into here, making these patterns, kind of a swirly pattern. So I'm going to start with 80 grit and work my way up to 400. I'll just show you some of the 80 grit, and I also need to sand this area by hand and finish digging out these bug trails. Let me get the dust collector going, get my face mask on, and we'll do a little sanding, and I'll see you when we're done and it's time to put the finish on. So I have it all sanded up. I power sanded to 400, and then I think I mentioned I was going to use 500 grit to sand with the grain, which I did. So now I'm going to put some sanding sealer on it, and I'll be using a shellac based sanding sealer. Now, see how that changes that color? This piece is really amazing. That is very, very pretty wood. I've only turned one other piece of this, and all the pieces I have came off the same tree. A friend of mine saw the neighbors cutting down a tree, and he decided to go ask if he could get some for me, because he knows I turn wood and I'll take anything offered to me just about. So that's pretty much what it's going to look like. The other thing that I'll do is take a brush and get it over this bark, and it's still kind of flaky, but I think this will toughen it up, and if anything wants to come off afterwards, I'll take care of that. So that's what I'm going to be doing for a while, and I'll get the inside finished and the outside finished, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to use shellac on everything. And when I'm all done, we'll come back and we will cut the tenon off. So I'll see you there. I finished this a number of days ago, but I haven't taken the tenon off, so now it's time to do it. I've got a bigger block in my chuck, and I've got the padded material. I'll bring the tailstock up like usual. And we'll just test it, and it looks like it's running pretty round to me, so we're going to go with that. Let me get a sharpened up 3/8 bowl gouge and we'll start cutting it off. Okay, freshly sharpened, and I'm running around 600 RPMs, and we'll remove most of it and then we'll slow it down and take the rest off. I think that's enough. I don't like to put a lot of pressure on that end grain. When it gets this small, it's just liable to split. And we don't want that to happen right now. So I'll get it sawed off, sanded up, and I'll be back and show you what we have. Well, here it is. A very beautiful piece of juniper. Look at that wood. It is spectacular. That's my worm track right there. And look at the inside. Really some nice colors in there. Lots of inclusions from where we had all those branches. Really made it interesting. Finished 8.5 inches in diameter. It's 3 3/4 inches tall, and the base is 5 3/4. I finished the base with Howard Feed and wax. It tends to not bother your signature if you sign it with ink. That's the reason I use that. The rest of it has got 2 coats of shellac-based sanding sealer, and it has 2 coats of shellac, and I use Scotch-Brite in between each coat. And then I used Acks abrasive paste on a soft cloth without the lathe spinning, and I just hand rubbed it out, and I think it added just a little bit to it, and I like it a lot. So this was a lot of fun to do. The next one I'm going to leave whole no matter what. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Leave a comment, I read them all. Hit the notification bell so you'll know when I have a new one out. It would also be great if you could share my videos around. Thanks to all of you who are subscribed to my channel. It means a lot to me. If you're not subscribed, consider doing so. I do many types of turnings, from segmented work to natural turnings from pieces of trees, and I put out videos weekly. Thanks again. Until the next time, see you later.